Oh, just getting a little organized here. Good morning. So good to be here with you on this lovely Friday morning. For you, those of you that are catching this live, catching this later, hello. My name is Tara. I'm a Christian wife, homeschool mom of almost 11 children. I'm feeling a little wedged in my chair right now, to be totally honest. I know you can't see it right now, but I have like this much belly going on because I'm having baby number 11 in 8 weeks. So I want to come upstairs though to my bedroom, which is where I'm right now, for today's live because today I'm talking about a little bit more of a sensitive topic for me. Feeling a little weepy today. Maybe it's just pregnancy. Maybe it's just the week I've been having. Maybe it's just, who knows? But I just kind of felt like, man, if I'm going to be a little weepy, then I'm fine to cry occasionally around my kids, but I just wanted to be with my girlfriends right now to talk about today's topic, which is the marks of motherhood. Stretch marks, varicose veins, wider hips, the belly, all of that. It's different for different women, right? So I'm going to get into it today. Oh, so jumping back before I kind of catch up, when I had 3 kids under 2, which would have been like my oldest is 16 now, honestly, I was scared to surrender all to Jesus. I mean, we sung about it on a Sunday, loved singing about the surrender, but doing the surrender, actually being a doer of the word, as I understood it, and not just a hearer only, especially when it came to family size, to trusting God with the timing, the circumstances, and all of that, right? I was scared. So I ran hard from God for several months because I didn't even want to think about the concept of having a big family and what that might mean for me. And one of my strands of fear was, what will that do to my body? I was in my late 20s. I was 28 when I had the twins. So I had, like I said, 3 kids under the age of 2. And all of a sudden, God is really pressing deeply on my heart with this unshakable Jonah like calling and saying, will you trust me? Will you trust me in a way you've never trusted me before? I mean, you trusted me with your eternal salvation, no biggie. But will you trust me with your life right now? Will you trust me with your body by extension? The body, by the way, that I made and I knit back together because I'd had 2 C-sections. And we did the math. Like, I kind of privately did the math that if I trusted God implicitly, meaning take the hands off the wheel of birth control, short of major life threatening circumstances, easily could have 12 kids by the time I'm in my mid 40s. Well, here's the deal, I'm 43 and I'm expecting baby number 11. So we're on track. And obviously something changed because I was running like Jonah, completely the opposite of the direction God was calling me in to trust him. So I was particularly scared, though I wouldn't have admitted it to anybody at the time, of what it would do to my body. Not just the C-sections, but just the toll. I'd had twins. So I had grown to have 2 7-pound babies inside of me for my second pregnancy. And I'd had stretch marks like since I hit puberty because I'm 6 foot tall. I, 40 pounds overweight, probably since I was 13. That's been a whole other journey for a whole other talk. So stretch marks were something I was like, ugh, and once they happen, they happen. They fade over time, but I was not really looking forward to what else could happen. And you hear horror stories, especially from, I don't know, but about you, but for me, the sort of older generation of women in my life, as soon as I became a mom, they started sharing every horror story I never asked to hear about birth stories and motherhood. And I was like, ugh, thanks, TMI, not really encouraging me in motherhood, which only added to my fears. So it took a lot to trust God with a human body that's frail, that stretches, that changes, that doesn't stay, 20. So this has been a journey. And when people ask me now, like, Tara, how do you deal with the marks of motherhood? Because it happened. I ended up getting varicose veins in my 30s, and it looks like somebody splashed paint on my ankles. And what used to be, in my opinion, one of my best features, my shapely legs, because I'm super tall, so I have these long legs. Yeah, I feel like I have grandma ankles now. And it's taken a lot of sanctification for me to just embrace those marks of motherhood and not cringe when I see them or cringe when someone else sees them. Because sometimes, to be totally honest, oh my gosh, so vulnerable. Someone will say to me, what happened to your ankles? Because it looks like somebody hit me with a club. Oh my, I'm not gonna show you right now because like I got the whole setup. But yeah, like they're black, they're kind of blue and purple. And it gets worse when I'm pregnant because all the hormones that happen when you're pregnant. So there's my ankles, and I never expected that. I was thinking like varicose veins, stretch marks, but I wasn't expecting these. I think my OB called them spider veins, and they're totally cosmetic. They're completely on the surface. They're not like deep vein thrombosis or anything like that, where you're thinking about blood clots or something really potentially life threatening. So they're cosmetic. But I wear long skirts because I enjoy wearing long skirts. But one of the reasons, I'm going to be totally honest, is because I'm covering up some of the marks of motherhood on my legs. I'm not as confident as I used to be showing off my shapely legs. So there's that. Just being totally real. Oh, yeah. And like the stretch marks are just like my husband's the only one who sees them. I don't go around in bikini. I've never been a bikini kind of girl. So there's that. But I also have, sorry, I hope this isn't too TMI, but I'm just going to be real. I developed an incisional hernia with baby number 8. So if you're not familiar with what that is, basically it's like the scar tissue. And this can happen when someone's had like one C-section. So it's kind of a shocker. It didn't happen till later. It did happen so late when it could have happened earlier. So yeah, just some of the tissue around one of my incisional scar where the babies come, and I joke that we really should just put a zipper because I've had all C-sections. Yeah, so just some of my abdominal, I don't know, guts, my whatever's down there, all my insides kind of bulges out. So I wear a hernia belt all the time. It's just like a really stretchy bandage that just kind of zoop up like a corset. And I wear it kind of more over my midsection belly button to goes over my big mommy belly. And I just kind of hold it in. Because if I didn't hold it in, gravity would do what gravity does. And well, listen, if you want to shock yourself, you can just Google hernias. The pictures are gross. So that's really like, there's not life threatening, but it's so there and I feel it. So when people ask me, Tara, how do you handle that? How do you handle that? And I was like, well, here's how I handle it. First, I focus on the things that I can focus on reasonably because there are so many things in this world I can't humanly control. And if I just focused on that frustration, like where would that lead me, right? So I choose instead, it's like choose your attitude. I choose to focus on what I can do. This to me is very much in line with Romans 12, verses 1 and 2, one of my favorite all-time verses. I'll share it with you now. I wrote it down. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you'll be able to test and approve what the will of God is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So much there. We could unpack it, but in the interest of time, I just want to focus in on to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, here in the West, there's a lot of confusion over women's bodies, beauty standards, what is female beauty. A lot of it is limited to appearance and to various shallow surface kind of beauty, where the scriptures, of course, talk about, the beauty of a woman really is her unfading spirit, her gentleness, her grace. It's the inner qualities. And of course, we have been gifted by God with our own physical beauty that's unique to women, and I'm so grateful for. That being said, motherhood involves two things: suffering and sacrifice. I mean, not just in motherhood, you're going to find that literally in any walk of life, right? In any calling, in any role that we walk in as people, as humans created in the image of God. But speaking to women, speaking as a mom, motherhood involves sacrifice and suffering. They're inescapable. And we're all going to experience that differently. I've particularly experienced it in the area of laying down my body as a living sacrifice and saying, Lord, I give my body, the body you gave me, to be a vessel of grace to bring children into this world, and beyond that, to raise them up for your namesake. That's a road of sacrifice. And it does involve suffering, not just a level of physical suffering, but emotionally too, especially as the kids get older and we start to deal with more complicated stuff. So, with all that in mind, knowing that the Western culture is telling me stay eternally youthful, and then, then you'll be beautiful, and then people will like you, then, there's just all this pressure from the outside that is that really God's standard of beauty? Is that really what he's calling me to? Should I run away from the blessing of children to try to hold on to a 20-year-old body which won't last? Now, listen, I know there are some women who are very fit. They have a combination of genetics and lifestyle and choices, and honestly, they still fit in their wedding dress at, 50, and I applaud them, and at the same time, I don't use them as my singular standard for myself. And at the same time, you know, choosing my attitude of being a living sacrifice, embracing the blessing of children, what that means for my body, is not an excuse to let myself go either, right? And just devalue or abandon all healthy practices either. So there's extremes. And I'm looking more for like the middle, the wide, beautiful plane that God has set up in the middle of how I walk out, embracing the blessing of children, knowing that there will be marks of motherhood that are left on my body. And this body isn't meant to last, right? It's meant to be resurrected. That's my perspective. That's my understanding of scripture. And I look forward to that. And for me, we're talking about varicose veins, grandma ankles, a little bit wider hips, a little bit saggier in the chest. Come on, keep it in perspective, right? There are a lot of people who experience a lot more suffering physically day to day than I do. So I just tell myself, keep it in perspective, knowing the Western standard and all that pressure. Keep it in perspective without just letting yourself go and turning into a sugaraholic and ballooning up to like 100 pounds over a good healthy weight for me. So finding that middle road and saying it's okay, this is going to happen. So I've chosen to embrace the marks of motherhood, and what that means for me is badges of honor. That's something I like show off in a really, I think, like walk around in a bikini, be like, look at me kind of thing. Like, I'm a mom. What's your problem? But instead, just quietly, privately, when I have a moment, I might glance glance in the mirror when I'm getting ready for a shower or something, and see some of the marks of motherhood. And I'm like, oh, I've changed. I don't look 20 anymore. Here it is. I had a feeling there were some tears in me today. Oh, I don't look 20 anymore because I'm 43. I've been blessed with 11 children, and I can choose to see that as like I've taken a beating or I have been honored. I've been entrusted. Whether it's, whether you have 3 kids or 4 kids, or you're trusting God on a road like I did years ago when we had 3 kids under 2, and I'm looking ahead, I'm like, what is this gonna mean? What is this gonna do to me? C-sections, the varicose veins, the multiple pregnancies, the nursing or pregnant or breastfeeding for 16 years. Almost no end in sight, though there is an end. It's called menopause for me because there's no medical reason for us to stop trusting God on this road that involves the sacrifice of laying down my body as a living sacrifice. It seems I used to think it'd be easier to be a martyr and to die gloriously. I didn't really want to die gloriously for Jesus. I don't know who does seek death like that. Ugh, but living for Jesus, especially as a mom, because our culture devalues motherhood so much. That's a whole other talk, right? Of how our culture values and devalues motherhood, how our culture really, really responds towards children. So, with all that pressure in mind, knowing it's coming from without, I can choose how I feel on the inside. And I have chosen to embrace the marks of motherhood as badges of honor with a quietness in my spirit, knowing it's okay. It wasn't meant to last. My body wasn't meant to last. I will die one day, and I look forward to the resurrection where I will have a renewed body and my shapely ankles will be back. Last point, there are some things I can do, and I've talked to my OB about it privately. I wear support socks now in the last part of my pregnancy to kind of help gravity get things back up the veins. I elevate my feet once or twice a day because that works well for me when I do get some edema, some swelling, because that helps with all of that. And lastly, after menopause, I can get some cosmetic surgery if I choose to help with the surface veins. If that's something that I would like to invest money into, if it would really bring me joy, then I could pursue that road. So it's a little quiet comfort. I know for some people that might not be important to you, and maybe holding on to those badges of honor, those marks of motherhood, is actually the road God's calling you to. I just find a comfort knowing that I'm looking at them now. It's okay. My ankles don't define me. I'm more than my ankles. So listen, if you're hearing this now or later, whenever you're catching this, and you're like, oh, Tara, you're talking to me. I struggle with the idea of having more children, of what that will mean, like the hits that my body is taking, short of massive medical circumstances. I see that as a different caliber. And you're struggling with trusting God. Like I was early on, you're like, what is this going to do to my body? But on some level, am I really trusting God? Am I willing to lay down my life? My body is a living sacrifice, but you're struggling. I get it. I was there. I've actually created a course where I really deep dive into this to help other women on that road come right alongside you because I've walked that road. And I have some really practical encouragement, some tips, some tricks, some advice that helped me overcome that fear. That course actually just dropped today. Boom, it's brand new and for a very limited time. It's on a ridiculously low sale. So I've got the link included in today's video. If this is resonating, if you want to check that out, feel free, go right ahead. So to wrap it up, because I'm getting up to my maximum time here, try to keep these things about 15 minutes or less. I just want you to know that by God's grace, I did obviously walk it out. I'm expecting number 11 now, that I didn't stay in that place of fear, and it was only by the grace of God. And that has been a journey to find grace, biblical clarity, courage, to trust God every step of the way. Every new varicose vein, every new thing that I notice on my body, I'm like, oh, that wasn't there before. My body's changing. And it's particularly changed because of embracing the blessing of children and what that means for me physically. But I no longer am trying to conform to the pattern of the world. I'm not trying to live for this external idea of beauty that has no room for motherhood of many children. It's very narrow here in the West, isn't it? Look like this or you have no value. Look like this or you've been used and hard done by. God has completely transformed me by renewing my mind, like we talked about in Romans today. And according to what? This standard, that standard, your standard, my standard? According to his word, which is the timeless thing that keeps us grounded no matter what, right? No matter what our culture happens to think, no matter what anybody says, everybody's opinions or their fears or my fears, getting grounded in the word of God for me has been the game changer, giving me the grace and the courage to not only embrace the blessing of children, that includes also the marks of motherhood. So I hope this has been a blessing to you today. And I look forward to seeing, if you're not already in the Big Family Moms Overcoming Struggles and Growing Grace group, I look forward to connecting.